adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast, coming to you from within the tallest tower of a ruined Shadowfell keep. I'm your host, Conor O'Brien, and joining me as always is my co-host, Martin O'Dwyer.
Hey Connor, what's the crack? How's it going?
Not too bad, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. Some very, very cool stuff came out during the week that I'm sure we're going to talk about.
If you're anyway gothically inclined, yes, this has definitely been your week. This has definitely been your week for UA stuff. So yeah, they released the gothic lineages.
Yeah.
On North Arcana. First off, we've had since before Christmas. Because they obviously took a break, I guess, for a while.
Yeah.
But, we got three. They're not quite races, but they kind of also are. They're called lineages, but they're kind of like extensions to a race, I guess.
I think.
So we have the.
I think it's. I think I remember reading something along the lines of in Tasha's when they were, they decoupled like your race from your ability scores and all that stuff. I remember. I think I read somewhere that they were saying going forward they won't be referring to it as your race; it'll be your lineage. So I think these are
so it is a race, so it's not referring to that. That's interesting to know. Actually, that's good to know.
Yeah.
But because they definitely approach it from. Okay, when I say race, I'm talking about races in terms of how it has been up until now. But they've definitely approached it in the same way that races have been, where they're taking the Tasha's thing, where they're like, just pick 2 of one ability score and 1 in another. You know, +2 in this and +1 in something else. Which I think is a good approach. But yeah, it's really interesting. So we've gotten 3 lineages now. We have the Dampier, the Hexblood, and the Reborn.
Yeah.
So which is essentially like Dampier is kind of like a half vampire.
Yeah.
The Hexblood is like a hag offspring, I guess is kind of the best way of putting it.
I'm looking at it like almost like a hag version of a tiefling.
Yeah, actually very like that. Yeah, whereas a tiefling, they have some infernal heritage, so therefore they kind of exhibit those features. If you have some sort of like dark fey heritage, you exhibit something similar to that. Yeah, that's actually a very interesting way of putting it. And the Reborn, which is essentially a sentient ghoul or something.
Yeah, it's your stock standard self-aware zombie.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
A la ghouls in Fallout or Warm Bodies or something like that.
I don't know why my first instinct was like the guy with his mouth who gets his mouth stitched shut in Hocus Pocus.
Oh yeah, I did. Oh, it's so good. That'd be so good. I actually had a couple. My immediate thought, because they do mention that your body is like potentially being stitched together from other parts and stuff.
Frankenstein.
So obviously, Frankenstein's monster was like one of the first things that come to mind. But also I thought like iZombie as well. Do you watch iZombie?
I've never.
It's really, really good. It might still be on Netflix. It's a really good show. I really enjoy it, even if it's a little bit silly. And as it goes on, it doesn't. It goes from like maybe like a 3 on the silly scale to like a solid 6 on the silly scale, but it never goes any deeper than that.
Yeah.
But it's really good because she's obviously undead and she needs to feed on brains to stay lucid. Otherwise, she'll start going into proper decrepit, monstrous zombie. That's more the show. The show is quite different from the comics of the same name, but it's really, really cool. I really thought of something like that would be awesome. But yeah, oh my god, the guy from Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, I know why it was my first.
Billy, wasn't it?
Yeah, Billy. I've seen so much zombie media. Like literally the last 10 years of pop culture has basically been zombie media and nerd culture, and like. To the point where actually I'm literally just completely uninterested in anything zombie related now, which is why the new Resi looks so great to me.
Because it's just been like, nah, fuck zombies, vampires.
Yeah,
which, by the way, is like such a hard left turn, but also my brain isn't rejecting it. You know when you hear something and you're like, that's not right. No, my brain is like, this makes sense because Resident Evil, because it's already ridiculously convoluted. Why the fuck not? Vampires, let's go.
Yeah, oh god, I love as well, it's hilarious to me because, right, so literally my favourite game franchise of all time is Devil May Cry. And Devil May Cry was born out of an attempt to make a Resi 3, but it was way too supernatural. It was like literally had like demons and stuff in it. And Capcom were like, not really Resi, but we do like this, so how about you go and make this its own thing? And now...
Well, that was back when Resi was still zombies.
Yeah.
And not... and even then, I think by the time Resi 3 came around, they had a few... They had the Hunters and a few other
Nemesis
things that were starting to make an appearance. It was starting to get a bit weird.
Yeah, there was Mr. X in Resi 2, sure. The Titans.
That was 2, and then they had... who was the guy in 3 then?
I believe 3 is Nemesis, isn't it?
Nemesis, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what if we had like an 8 foot tall zombie and he had a machine gun? Why not?
Yeah, he's a flamethrower at one stage as well. I remember, and a
He
rocket
does,
launcher,
yeah.
and yeah, Jesus. What were we even talking? Oh yeah, that's why zombies, undead,
Yeah,
reborn. Yeah,
zombies.
gothic race
Yeah,
is cool.
just trace it back.
Yeah,
Trace it
trace it
back.
back. I think out of all of them, just looking at them, like in terms of like flavor, the Hexblood really intrigues me. But like mechanically, I really, really like the Dampier.
Same. I like that. I think the Dampier pairs. So I had a plan, a backup character essentially for our friend Gavin's campaign. If my current character Ren dies, there is a Blood Hunter half vampire I wanted to play. I was just going to homebrew it, and I was just going to pick like a high elf or possibly a Shadow Kai, and just say, look, can we just say that he's half vampire? And I'm not like burning in the sun, but I'm uncomfortable in the sun. And I don't need to drink blood, but if I do, I get a bit of a high off of it, and I kind of very light stuff, nothing too mechanically hard. But this actually means that I could potentially play
Yeah.
a full-on half vampire now, and also the way they have an ability. I pull it up here. So there's an ability for this particular lineage where they have a vampiric bite. You can bite someone. Constitution is your attack and damage modifier. It's a D4 damage, which isn't a lot, but you do add the con on top of it. So potentially like 9 damage maximum via standard rules. But there's a thing then, when you hit someone,
Yes.
you can do one of two things. Either you regain the hit points dealt pardon me, from the bite, which means you could be gaining health back, drinking someone's blood like a vampire. Very, very cool. Or gain a bonus to the next ability check or attack roll you make. The bonus equals the damage dealt by the bite. That means that it's almost that ties in so well with a Blood Hunter for me. You're kind of almost using the blood you've drawn from your enemy to enhance your your follow-up attack, and I think thematically it just fits so well.
I think like pairing a half vampire with something that literally does hemomancy, like blood magic, is just such a natural pairing. Like,
yeah, absolutely. So that's really cool for me that I now have that. Also, he also has another ability which is Spider Climb.
yes,
and that's not
So
just
cool.
having a climbing speed. It actually specifically says you can move across vertical surfaces and upside down along ceilings while leaving your hands free. You're essentially David Bowieing that shit.
It's very. Have you read like OG Dracula, like the Bram Stoker novel Dracula?
I have not.
So there's a part in Dracula where Jonathan Harker is in Dracula's castle, and like he's beginning to suspect that something is up. And at one point he looks out his window and he looks up at. I think he look like. I'm probably not going to be exact here because it's been maybe 5 years since I read Dracula. But like he looks out his window one night and he looks up at the tower where the count is supposed to be sleeping, and he sees him like lean out the window and then like a lizard on all fours with his fingers and toes crawl like vertically down the tower, and that's when he's like, oh god, what the hell's going on here? And then he meets like the three female vampires, I think, that are like eating babies and stuff. It's Dracula, great book. Can really see why it literally kicked off an entire subculture.
Yeah. It's very cool. Alucard is the first person that jumps to mind, but then again, the character I wanted to play was very much based on Alucard.
There's a great anime from like I'd say it must be like very early 2000s or late 90s called Hellsing. And
I've heard of it.
Its main character is Dracula. He's called Alucard. Like his name is Alucard, and he's like he's essentially like bound in service to this lady called Integra, who is Integra, and she's the head of the Integra family, and they're basically like MI6 for vampires, ghouls, ghosts, and goblins, and all that kind of stuff. And he just wanders around with like mad vampiric powers and pistols that no literal human could wield. Like the pistol is like this long. He's like walking around, showing the Simpsons when he's like, McBain, that hand cannon ain't registration. If I hear we go by the book, and he's like, buy book, and shoots the book. Yeah, if you change that into like a modern like Glock looking like semi-automatic pistol, that's what this dude is carrying around. And man, if you're into vampires and stuff like that, and this Dampier stuff, it kind of speaks to you. I would recommend giving Hellsing a watch because that's a great spin on that character. I just bit grim as well though. So if you're sensitive to things like that, just fair warning.
Yeah.
No, like there's a couple episodes that are very grim, very. Grim.
I don't want to get too into it. Okay, I refuse to get too into this, but I have an awful story about how grim animes can be sometimes. Have you ever watched Goblin Slayer?
For like the last
Yeah.
for like the last 30 seconds in my head, he's going to say Goblin Slayer to me.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? I've never watched Goblin Slayer. I don't plan to. But I was getting a lot of Crunchyroll ads on Facebook and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, this is the big anime. This is a new anime. It's very popular, blah, blah, blah. So I'm getting lots of it. And all the clips I'd seen were basically a guy in a suit of armor going through a cave, absolutely massacring goblins. And I thought, wow, this looks pretty metal. It's definitely one of these gory animes, a bit like Attack on Titan, where you see a lot of stuff like that.
Very explicit is the word.
Incredibly. But and I'm not a super anime fan. There's a handful I am watching and I'm trying to get into, but I'm by no means a super anime fan. My friend Aaron, who lives over in Canada, is though, and Aaron is constantly watching some new anime and going through it and reading manga and stuff like that. So I was talking to him one day, I'm like, hey, have you seen this Goblin Slayer thing? I'm seeing a lot of it online. It looks like it's pretty popular. And he's like, I haven't actually. I'm like, you should watch it probably and see what it's like. It seems like people are into it. And then he's like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a try. So they didn't have a TV in their house over. He has himself and like two or three roommates. And he's in the living room. And he just has a laptop and have a projector on a big empty wall. You see where this is going?
I know, oh god, like I wouldn't. Before the anime, there was a manga account, and then there was all the hype about the manga because there's some very D&D elements to this world. It's very heavily D&D
it's very much
influenced.
A party of adventurers going and fighting goblins,
and
which is a kind of D&D.
Literally, there's a guild where different classes come, and they start out getting sent out on really low rank missions, and then they rank up, and then they get higher level missions. And they go fighting things like dragons and other world ender stuff. And the whole gimmick of the show is this guy Goblin Slayer is a high to mid ranking hero, but all he does is kill goblins for backstory reasons. And like I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I went and watched the show, and like, yeah, it's just grim, man. It's just so grim, and there's some issues.
So again, I'm not going to get too into it, but so Aaron was setting up to watch it. He had his laptop and a projector, and he's about to put it on and try and watch it for the first time. His roommate comes in and goes, what are you doing? And he's just like, oh, I'm just going to start watching this new anime. It's called Goblin Slayer or whatever. And his roommate doesn't watch anime, so his roommate's kind of like, is anime not like, is that not what all like weird, like, it's not like big titty kind of like sexualizing all women and all that kind of stuff? And he's like, no man, honestly, there's some of that, but like there's other animes that are not at all like that, you know. And he was like, here, sit down with me and watch this one and see what you think. So, and again, I had never seen this. I suggested it to him purely because it just seems like the thing people were talking about at the time. And Aaron sits down, they watch, and the first episode opens with a very gruesome, like goblins killing people and stabbing and massacring people. There's also like a really like an unnecessarily
graphic.
Graphic is the word, yeah, an unnecessarily graphic like sexual assault scene in the first episode. And so of course Aaron's like, Connor, what have you done to me? Because he just told his roommate that's not what anime is, and this is the first episode of anime his roommate ever watches. Completely proves him wrong. And he messages me the next day and he's like, what the fuck was that? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, the very first episode had this. And I'm like, no, I mean it's gory, but it's not. He's like, no, this actually happened. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I just suggested it because people seem to like it.
Yeah, I read the manga when it came out, and like, you know, when it's a manga, all you hear is, oh yeah, it's good, man, or like you might see the odd panel of like a cool moment, and then I was like, oh yeah, this sounds, and like, oh, it seems D&D, I'll read this, and then I got to that bit in the chapter, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna go, and I think I'm gonna try My Hero Academia or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's incredible, like. So
D&D.
We're getting massively distracted from the point of this, but yeah, that's just a funny story about how I made my friend Aaron look like an awful person in front of his roommate.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Anyone who only listens to this is going to miss out on just the horrendous second-hand embarrassment facial expressions I was making for the entire time you were telling that story.
Yeah, it's anyway, D&D.
Yeah.
So segue. But yeah, so
today we're talking about goblins.
No, we're not.
No, we're definitely not.
I can talk about kobolds. I have some stuff about kobolds we can talk about later. So yeah, so basically that's a Dampier, which I think is very cool. I'm super into because again, I've had ideas about half vampires. There's you could play a full vampire, but there's a lot of stuff like sunlight sensitivity,
The necessity to be evil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, getting bumps to your dex and strength up to like 16, I think it is, and also turning into a mist when you die, which is like it would definitely, if any one player in the party was to play that, it would definitely put them above the rest of the players, which wouldn't necessarily be fair.
You'd need to have like,
now,
I want to be a werewolf, and I want to be a vampire, and I want to be a lich.
yeah, exactly. If you had an entire party of stuff like that, that's fine. But not, it wouldn't be fair otherwise. So this is like a really nice kind of compromise that still allows players to get that vampire feel, but also not have to play something that's mechanically broken.
Ooh, oh my god, you can play Blade now. Oh my god.
You could totally play Blade. Yeah. Oh my god, Blade. How do There's some here that I'm just not getting. We got Billy and we got Blade. Those are two people I did not list here.
Give me a second. I'll come up with a zombie, and I'll come up with a witch with a B name as well. Bathsheba from The Conjuring. Yes. Get in there.
I have one. I have one for the Hexblood. So the Hexblood being kind of like the, like you said, it's like the tiefling equivalent, with instead of fiends words. God damn it! It's too early in the podcast for me to already not be able to speak. Instead of fiends, it's with fae, like dark fae, like hags and stuff. Have you ever played Dragon Age?
No, but I have heard you talk about it many times.
Oh yeah. So in the first game, and this character is reoccurring a little bit, but mostly in the first game, she's a companion, and her name is Morrigan. Named, of course, for the Irish Celtic goddess of war and death. So her name is Morrigan, and you find her fairly early on in the game. So the second companion you don't find, or third companion you find, and she's living in some sort of swamp, the Kokari Wilds or something like that, with her mother Flemeth. And Flemeth is a world-renowned witch. She's been alive for centuries, even though she appears to be human. There's loads of mystery around her. When you meet her, she's just a belligerent old woman. But her daughter lives with her, and basically Morrigan is like, if I could be wrong on some of this. I looked up some of it today just to kind of refresh my memory, but I haven't played Dragon Age 1 in a while. There is like a whole subplot where Flemeth has supposedly had dozens of daughters, or hundreds even of daughters. She always sires daughters. But the purpose of having a daughter is that when her body becomes too old, she takes her daughter's body, and she's now young and beautiful again. So she always siring these beautiful daughters, teaching them very good magic. And then once her body gets really old, she's like, cool, I guess I'll just move into this new thing, like a hermit crab.
Oh god, that's a horrific visual.
But yeah, so Morrigan kind of came to mind about the Hexblood. Like, you could be someone who is like, oh, my mother is a hag, she made me or whatever, or maybe stole me from a family, a happy family, because she needed a daughter to raise. Or like
there's some
Tangled.
There's some really good prompts in that for the Hexblood, because they've with all of these they've D8 tables where you can roll. I think it's like flaws and origins. The Hexblood ones have some really cool ones. You just remind me of what you were saying there. And the very first one is, seeking a child, your parent made a bargain with a hag. You are the result of that arrangement.
I think that's one of the that's where my mind went immediately. Like, your parents couldn't conceive, so they made a deal with a hag. The hag allowed it to happen, but the deal is, oh, when your daughter turns 16 or whatever, she comes to live with me, and then that's maybe how you're born, or how you kind of end up with her. There's also fake kidnappers swapped you and your parents' child. That's a thing from like old folklore.
Yeah, changelings.
Changelings used to be swapped in and out. And they take the other baby away, and they just leave a doppelganger child there.
I just had a flashback to literally one of my most embarrassing moments in college. Do you want to hear about it?
Go on.
So I think it was like my second or third week in first year in college, and we were doing this was the Irish Literary Revival, and we were doing Yeats, and we were talking about like Irish folklore and stuff, and we were talking about changelings, and the lecturer goes, does anyone here know what a changeling is? And me being the fucking Celtic mythology nerd here went, I do. And she goes, would you like to explain to the crowd what a changeling is? And this was like a big lecture, so it was like, I think there was like 200 people in the lecture.
Yeah, it's a full hall. Like,
yeah. And I put my hand, and I was like, oh yeah, so a changeling is when the fairies would take a baby and they would they would swap the child with a fairy. And then there's the whole hall just like erupted in laughter, and I was just like sinking.
Just fumble the words like 3 times.
So like in my head, I had the same sentence, 2 of the same sentence going at the same time, and it was they switch the baby with a fairy and they swap a baby with the fairy, and my brain went and put them together, and I went it's when they swatch the baby with a fairy. I was like, even now I'm like, I can feel that in my bones. I'm sorry. It's just, when you relive a horrific moment and you just have to share it with someone. I've now decided to share that with the internet.
We've now both just told 2 embarrassing stories. You're welcome, internet.
Yeah, this is just very rapidly descending into our therapy now.
I have a prediction that at some point this podcast will just descend into, it'll be like, first it's D&D, then it's like a D&D and gaming podcast, then it's just a general nerd podcast, and after a while it's just the 2 of us telling shit stories about one another. And that episode like 100 will be like, hey look, we've given up on D&D, we're just going to talk absolute shit about each other for an hour and a half.
Oh god, do we just change the channel name from the Micflayers podcast to this shit happened.
it'll be the Us Flayers podcast, because we're constantly flaying ourselves with bad stories.
So Hexblood. sorry, just all of them. For the Reborn, I don't know if you've seen it, but any anime fans out there that have seen
Tokyo Ghoul.
I wasn't thinking Tokyo Ghoul, no, but that is also a good one. Why can I literally not think of it now? Soul Eater. Have you seen Soul Eater?
I'm not familiar with Soul Eater.
Soul Eater's pretty cool. It's sort of like Naruto-ish, where it's like everyone. There's a group of like early teen children who are Shinigami. They're death gods. They're Grim Reapers, and they go to Grim Reaper High to learn to be better Grim Reapers and go out and
so many bloody animes are like, oh yeah, you go to a high school for this very specific thing.
No, it's not. I don't think it's called that, but yeah, it's basically Grim Reaper High, which is taught by Death Kid Grim Reaper, and they go out and they fight witches and monsters and stuff. But there is one of the. I think he's one of the teachers in it. I think his name is Dr. Stein, or no, or Frankenstein.
Dr. Frank Stein.
But he's basically like a scientist. He's got a bolt in his head that goes through here and sticks out here a little bit. Like it's like literally this big, like compared to his head. And he like uses weird electrical powers, and that's immediately what I thought of when I thought of the Reborn, because he is all like stitched together and stuff, and like when he gets hurt, he like stitches himself back together and all this kind of stuff.
That could be actually, if you played like a Reborn, like, and go like lean properly into the Frankenstein thing of it. Play a Reborn and then go Storm Sorcerer, and just imagine that when they use lightning to like power you and bring you back to life, a lot of that lightning stayed in your system.
Oh, that's such a good. Oh my god, that's such a good character.
Really cool.
Oh my god, and you've like a built-in villain in your story. Then it's just the person who made you.
Yeah, I'm dying to play a Storm Sorcerer. I don't know why. I just really want to. They're not even a particularly powerful class. I just think it's a really cool flavor to be like thunder, wind, lightning. You know, so cool.
Hell yeah. You literally could play Storm from the X-Men, because it's a sorcerer too. So your magic is from within. It's inborn in you. You can totally reflavor that as a mutant gene.
Absolutely. And you get all your sleet storms and everything else along with it. So yeah.
Should we I suppose, should we actually like talk about what we're supposed to be talking about yet, or do you want to just shite around about what we've been watching on TV for another bit?
I mean, again, I feel that the podcast is going to descend to that eventually, but maybe we could we could try to fight it for now. We'll fight the urge for now.
Yeah,
and eventually we'll be worn down.
To be fair, we did talk about a little about D&D there. We just mixed in like a fairly hefty amount of bullshit with that. So I feel like that's fine. I feel like that's kind of our brand at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're still cultivating our brand, but you know what? If that's our brand, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, me too. So, shall we actually get down to business and talk about what we were supposed to be talking about?
Let's get down to business. You prompted me.
I know.
So what we're going to talk about this week, actually.
No,
we talked quite a lot last week.
No, stop. Finish it. Who's going to stop the Huns? Come on.
To defeat the Huns.
There we go.
So last week we talked almost exclusively, I think, about our homebrew worlds and our processes for like how we go about homebrewing things, ideas, like little tips and stuff like that. Definitely check it out if you're interested. Yeah. That's almost like a part one to what we're going to talk about now.
Yeah, we did a bit of a chat as well about people we thought did it particularly well, and give some good examples and like why we thought they did it well too. Absolutely, that was a lot of fun.
This week I thought we would we do something similar, but a bit more specific, a bit less general, a bit more specific. obviously myself and Martin have been DMing for a while each now. We've cultivated a lot of ideas. Some of them we've implemented in our world, others we have not. Some we may never implement. We just think, hey, this is probably a good idea. Someone should do it sometime. And I honestly thought this would be a very free form thing where we'll just bounce back and forth.
Yeah.
Here's an idea I had for a thing in my world. Brief explanation or whatever, and we'll just kind of go bounce off each other and see where the conversation leads us.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so down. I've
like podcasting.
Yeah. I've got oh, excuse me, Jesus. Sorry, my body is refusing to obey me today. So I've got a couple of cool little homebrew stuff that I've made pulled up on my screen here. Oh God, I thought you'd go first. Okay. I'll talk about one first. It isn't super powerful, and I just actually quite like it, and it does tie in. It's a magic item that was created out of necessity because I had created a faction that uses it. And I've told you about this before. This is a magic item that I call the anglerfish mask. So it's basically it's a mottled grey it's a plain looking mottled grey mask aside from a single roughly marble sized burning green gem, bang, right there in the middle. And while you wear this mask, you have advantage on perception checks while you are in a shadowed area.
Cool. So it's because obviously it's like
apologies, how did I miss the last line of this damn thing? But while wearing this mask, you have advantage on perception checks while you're standing in a shadowed area, and also gain dark vision up to 60 feet if you didn't have it before.
That's pretty cool. Do you only have the dark vision while you're in a shadowed area? Well, that's what's better because you'll be using it while you're in a shadowed area.
So sorry, I probably phrased that poorly for D&D, but there are two separate features. You get, if you do not have dark vision, it gives you dark vision out to 60 feet. And if you if you're in an area of shadow and you make a perception check, it gives you advantage on it. And yeah, it comes from, I had a faction in a place I brought myself and Conor have actually brought up a couple of times on the podcast so far. It's a my sea elf kingdom called the Cirith Laure. And I was designing essentially like a thieves guild or like a mercs guild, something like kind of just your stock standard like criminal underground kind of faction who kind of like the was it the Clasp in Critical Role?
Yes.
Yeah, like the Clasp in the Myriad. And like the story, I came up with the name first, right? So this is how actually probably a good way to explain it, considering we're talking about world building. Is I had wanted to come up with a faction, and I was like thinking along the sea term, and I was like, okay, they're like sneaky, they ambush people, they kind of they do like they do all your standard kind of like a thieves guild stuff, like the intimidation rackets, protection rackets, all that kind of stuff, assassinations. So I was like, what would be a good one for those? And I was just thinking about it, and I was like, oh, anglerfish are cool. They like live down in the dark, they lure people in with that, they lure prey in with that like glowing light, and then they and then they jump out of the darkness and attack. And like as soon as I thought about that, then I had an idea for the mask. And the lore reason for it, and also the way they got that particular faction got their name, the Anglers, is basically they used essentially like bioluminescent glow lights, and they sort of like I was taking a bit of inspiration from Hannibal, where he tied I think it was like torches to the horns of bulls, and marched them with his army at night to give an impression that his army was bigger than it was when he was marching on Rome.
That's really cool.
So I had a thing where they either used torches or they used like bioluminescent stuff they had picked up just because they're underwater, and put that to the north at night, and it made it look like they were attacking from the north, but instead attacked from the west, and then like overtook them, and they did it in the dark wearing these masks. And partly Splinter Cell inspired as well, you might have guessed, with like the single glowing green thing. But yeah, that's been pretty popular with my players, and I just really liked it as well because like I like the Anglers. I think I think they were a pretty cool faction. It was like the first proper faction I designed as well, so I was quite happy with how it came out.
That's right. I do like putting a nautical. I don't know why nautical thematic stuff really gets me. It just does. Like you obviously did your I think that was like your first arc, wasn't it, in around Laure?
Yeah, it was like their second proper arc, but it was their first one out of your basic. You're in a city, the Watchers then have 3 missions for you. Pick a mission, go complete the mission, come back. And yeah, pretty much straight after that, this was then kicked into their first proper mission and proper arc, and also a backstory arc for a player.
That's really good. Like it's a really flavorful thing, and you made obviously a whole city that's half above water, half below water, because it's a CL city and stuff like that. And I think that I've always, when you first mentioned the Anglers as a as a group of like criminals to me. I was like, oh, that's so damn cool. I love that.
Oh, thank you. What about yourself? I'm sure you've got. Actually, I'm very curious to see what you have because I might learn something about our current campaign.
Maybe. Okay, so I have a lot of stuff here. I just have a long note. I just scribble stuff down every time I have an idea. Most of these I've not implemented in the world. They're just ideas I have for things I can put in if I want to. Okay, do you want a potion, a magic item, a monster, a cantrip, or just some lore stuff?
I'm a fiend for lore, but the cantrip for some reason is appealing to me right now. I'm curious.
Okay. I'll give you 2 that I have here.
2 for the price of 1 on Micflayers podcast. Buy 1 get 1 free. Come along.
I haven't spec'd them out properly yet, but basically one of them is I wanted first of all I wanted more melee cantrips, so that if you're playing something like an Eldritch Knight or something like that, you have more value in it. You have more options to pick from. It's only about 3 or 4 proper melee spells you can use. So I have an idea for a melee fire one. Keep in mind, my world is a little bit industrialized, not heavily, but a little bit. There are trains, there are airships, there are like factories and stuff like that. So I had an idea for a melee fire one that's essentially like a blowtorch, cool. Where you can spark up like almost like a dagger length blade of fire, and you could swipe at someone.
That's cool. That's real cool.
But also I had an idea like put you know the cantrips typically have a damage thing, and then they're also it has this secondary effect. The secondary effect of this is that over X amount of time you can carve through however many inches of metal.
Oh, cool. Very it's very lightsaber.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm actually the specific idea I got it from is season 3 of Legend of Korra. Mako makes a blade and he tries to cut his way out of the Earth Kingdom prison. And he's there for a while. He's even he's doing this and he's moving through it, and he actually stops for a second and shakes his hand out like he's tired from straining his hand, and he keeps going then. And I'd like it to be like you can get through, I don't know, for every minute you spend you can get through an inch or something like that. Maybe that might be too much, but it'd be enough that like you could eventually cut a hole big enough for you to climb through, like a circular hole, but you could be there for an hour.
It'd be cool. An idea I had just when you mentioned that, just tying it back to the Mako thing where you kind of had to take a break for a second, like shake his hand out. You could tie that to Constitution, in that you could say that you can use this to cut through you can use it to cut through solid metal at a rate of minutes times your Constitution modifier.
That's not a bad idea, yeah.
And then you just have to,
very cool, actually, yeah.
You just have to stop and take a break for 15-20 minutes, kind of recover your energy, and then you're good to go again.
Yeah, it's just in the interest of having something that feels a little bit industrialized, but also fulfilling that role of having more melee cantrips, more melee stuff. I have a second one as well. Okay, this is a working title for the name, so don't judge me just yet.
Okay.
It's called. It's Fallout inspired.
Okay.
So there's a weapon in Fallout called the Power Fist.
Okay.
Yeah, don't you fucking laugh. So this one's called the Steam Power Fist, and it's a D12 damage. It's just melee damage or bludgeoning damage. It's not force or anything like that. But the idea is that. Do you ever see Bridge to Terabithia?
Yes.
There's a bit in that where they're in Terabithia, and they're fighting some creatures, and the boy kind of looks down at his hand, and as he rolls his hand like that into a fist, all these pieces of metal and pistons and gears appear and fold around his hand, and he basically punches the creature. And I always thought the animation of that looked insane. So what it is it's a conjuring kind of thing. You're summoning a gauntlet with all these pistons and gears on it, and it gives you a power punch. There's a weapon in Fallout called the Power Fist.
I need to Google something because it's reminded me of something I think you'd actually really like it, and it's probably a good thing to look at. But continue. It's
just a melee attack. It does a D12 damage because I figured D12s don't get used enough in D&D, and 2, because it's a 5-foot range. You have to do it on someone who's right up on you. I figure that you can let it go to, and it is magical, so it would overcome resistances and stuff like that. But it's still just flat bludgeoning damage, so it's nothing particularly special. I just love the visual of it, where you're summoning maybe all these spectral pistons and cogs, and they form a gauntlet around your hand, and then you can strike someone with it. And maybe the secondary effect is if they fail a save, they get pushed back or something like that as well, like 5 feet.
No, that I love that visual. Yeah, particularly that whole thing of like you roll your hand and like it forms.
Yeah, no, it's all like appearing as you roll it, and you have it's like a full plate armor gauntlet, but then there's like cogs and pistons on the wrists and stuff like that. And
yes, I'm okay. I'll send it to you afterwards. But have you watched any One Piece?
No, I have not.
I can fairly confidently say that I think One Piece possibly is the best world building of any anime going.
That's high praise.
I think like, a lot of people would agree with me, to be honest. It's an incredibly lively, living, breathing world, and everything feels like it's going on even without the characters. It's just really, really good world building. Everything feels very real, and like they kind of fairly often, because it's a whole thing. The whole point of the show is adventuring to try and find this thing called the Grand Blue, which is like this giant sea, I think, and to find the One Piece, which is like the Pirate King's treasure. You find One Piece, you are the Pirate King. But in One Piece, there are these things called devil fruits, and there are these like mystical fruits where if you eat one, it will give you specific powers. And there's a character in it who you immediately reminded me of with that cantrip, and he's called Eustace Kid, and he's got like I think it's like magnetism powers, and like when he goes into a fight, he does that. He goes like that, and then like metal just tears itself out of the walls and the ground and forms like a giant arm around his fist.
Yeah.
And like if you want to make a kind of a pirate style campaign, actually, I would say get yourself into One Piece. Ichiro Oda is such a good world builder, and his characters are really, really charming, and like just the level of connectivity between everything, and like everything feels connected, but also everything feels like it could exist on its own. Like you could do a whole show just on one of these islands and it would still work. But there's like it's amazing, and he's been doing it for decades at this stage. Like One Piece is still going.
Yeah, I was gonna say that anime's been around for like a while.
Like you can tell how long it's been around if you watch it, because the first episodes are in the style of like a late 90s, early 2000s anime, and then as you go, you can literally see technology get better as you watch the show. That's how long this man has been doing great world building. I could not recommend more if you're doing anything nautical themed or pirate themed in particular. Ichiro Oda, One Piece, read it.
I'll definitely have a look at it. I want to say Mike dressed up as the main character.
Mike absolutely loves One Piece. He absolutely loves it.
That's very cool. It's going to be another Naruto situation with this like 900 episodes, isn't there?
Oh boy. One Piece outran Naruto. It's still
what?
It's still okay. Hang on. Let me do some googling and we find it. Just hang on. You continue. I'll find out how many episodes there are and how many mangas.
I'll give you something else I got here. Let me see what else I got. Okay, here's one actually that you've seen already. But I gave it to how many episodes?
931.
Oh god, no thank you. I'll if ever I find myself at the time, maybe, but I gotta get through 800 episodes of Naruto first. So.
Yeah, and then there's Boruto.
And knowing me, like I'll probably be so obsessed with it afterwards. I would like, well, I might as well continue into Boruto. So
yeah, sorry, go on. I'll give you one after this.
So here's one you've actually seen before. So I played Assassin's Creed Syndicate. How long ago? It doesn't matter. I like not maybe within the last couple of years. For the first time, really enjoyed it. Loved that's like the most modern those games have gotten. That you're obviously not in the present day with like
in terms of like a main storyline. Yeah, that's the most modern. I think.
So I really wanted. They have a grappling hook gauntlet in that where you can get onto rooftops super easy. They shoot a little wire up, and then it's got like a spool, and it just pulls them up onto a roof. It's a great mechanic in the game.
You're like English Batman.
Yeah, it's Gotham by Gaslight.
Britman away.
So basically, so the idea was I wanted to make a grappling hook, like a grappling hook gauntlet, and I thought about, okay, well, what if it like fires this, or how can I make it steampunky so it fits in a fantasy world? And I kept thinking about it, and the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, okay, I don't want it to be a physical thing. It should be a magical thing. It's a D&D world. So I thought about the Mage Hand cantrip. And you'll know this because Aerith, who is the Wood Elf Blood Hunter in our current campaign, has one of these. And it's basically a gauntlet. And it looks very much like one of the gauntlets from Assassin's Creed Syndicate. It fits over the wrist. I think it's on his left hand. I can't remember. It fits over your hand, though. And then when you want to grappling hook to something, there is no spool, no hook, no wire. What happens is you basically put your hand up, and out of your hand comes a spectral mage hand attached to a spectral chain that runs back to you. And that hand flies out 30 feet or whatever it is, grabs onto the ledge or wherever you want to go, and then pulls you to that ledge along this spectral chain. So there's no spool, nothing. It's all manifested in that split second, and nothing needs to retract or wind up or anything like that. And I thought it can also cast. You can cast Mage Hand while you have it on you as well, which is just a little side thing. So I felt like that made sense. But Aerith will often have his Mage Hand hold his cigar for him while he's doing something else with his two hands.
Hold your next arrow, man.
True, yeah. Just like load your bow faster and also an arrow ready.
That's a thing in I could bring up again one of my favorite authors, Brent Weeks. There's an assassin in his thing called Scared Rabble. He's named after the bird because he's got scars, and his particular skill is he can perfectly imitate voices. And he's an expert archer, and what he does is he uses his magic called the talent that these assassins have to manifest like spectral arms, and they hold like 3 arrows either side of him while he's shooting, and he's like, boom, shoot, and then the spectral hand hands him another arrow, and he just draws and shoots. So like he has like 6 arrows going at once, and he doesn't need to, like, all he needs to do is pull the string back every time. There's no grab it from your quiver, load it, bring it. It's literally like a machine, like an arrow machine gun, and he just like rains arrows on people. It's so dope.
I kind of wish there was some mechanic baked into the Astral Monk for that. That'd be really cool. Because you can summon extra arms with that. Really awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, there's a game called Ashura's Wrath, and you're basically a very, very, very angry Astral Monk.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just an idea I had. I wanted to make a grappling hook that a la Batman or Assassin's Creed Syndicate or something like that, but I didn't want it to be too techie, too modern.
Yeah.
And the idea of blending it with Mage Hand seemed really good. I had an idea. I haven't quite worked it out, but I had an idea for like a bunch of like a thieves guild that use these things, and they specifically make them themselves. They make them within their own organization, so it's not something you can buy in a shop. It's something that these thieves use.
Very Assassin's Creed,
yeah. And that's how they get around rooftops and stuff, and they can pull themselves to different rooftops and out a window or up to a window or whatever they need to do.
That's cool. Yeah. That's I love that a lot. So I think this is one I've actually probably not told you because it's been a fairly recent thing, but it's actually an item one of my players wanted to commission. So one of my players is about to hit gunslinger, so he's starting to experiment with like with ammo and stuff. And they killed a frost giant zombie recently, and he got I think like pieces. I think he took its heart when they killed it.
Of course.
And he brought it to this guy in the capital city market who's an artificer, and he said like, yeah, give me a week and I'll make you 10 magic cold bullets. But I didn't want to just give him cold bullets because that's a bit boring, right? And particularly because frost giant zombie, no, that's no mean feat killing that like that. Those things hit hard. They are very nasty. So I was like, you know what, like I don't want to just I want to do a bit of a twist. So I call this frostbite ammunition. So it's crafted from the essence of the heart of a frost giant zombie by Alston Bodyknock. These shells are cold to the touch, have arcane sigils of freezing and breaking carved into their casings, and the head of the round is a sickly blue threaded with veins of jet black, giving a hint to its sinister origins. When you successfully hit a creature with one of these shells, they take an additional 1d4 cold damage and 1d4 necrotic damage.
Ooh, God, because it's a frost zombie giant. Yeah, cool. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like those a lot. I think this is very cool. So like when I was trying to come up with it, I can see I can see the like magic bullet in my head. Like what actually kind of gave it a lot of inspiration for is, do you ever hear the myth that they use an ice bullet to kill JFK?
Yeah, it melted.
Yeah. Oh, that's when I couldn't find it. Yeah, but like there's a really shitty movie. I can't even remember the name, but one of the characters is like an assassin. He has ice bullets, and he goes and he like pulls open the slot for the thing, and he pulls out the thing, and you can see it, and it's literally just a bullet casing with like this like crystal blue like round in it, And like as soon as he was like, oh, I want to make like ice ammo, I was like, that popped into my head straight away. And then as soon as I was like, oh, but it's a zombie, oh, we can do something like different with this. And I just like immediately thought of like the same thing, but it's got like, looks like infected or like dead veins almost going through the ice. And I was like, ooh, that would be cool.
There's some really nice black and blue visuals that come to mind. I don't know what it is. I did this with an Avengers bow that was like an ice bow in our first campaign, and I love the idea for. I don't know why. I just love the idea of frost ammunition or frost arrows, whatever. You ever see like an airburst round? So that there's like smart ammunition. There's this show that used to be on Discovery called Future Weapons.
Oh my god, I have. Yes, I have. Yeah. That was like the one. There was like that bullet storm gun that fires like 1,000,000 rounds in a second or something stupid like that.
Yeah, well, this one was like this. They're like these. I don't know what they are, 30mm cannons, something like that, that mount onto naval ships, and they're relatively small cannons. They're about the size of a person, standing up, and then they have like, I don't know, a 5 or 6 foot long barrel. But then the ammunition was smart in that you could set it 2 different ways. It would fire like a regular bullet, and then as a single piece, it would impact a wall and punch a hole through it. And they had this like rebar concrete test wall that they did it on, and it punched a hole clean through it, but it was a hole that was about a foot around. And I'm like, that's pretty good if you want like a straight precision shot. And they're like, all right, what if you want to just absolutely like bring this place down to crumbles, and if you set the bullet the other way, they are smart enough that they know to burst, and they explode into shrapnel like 6 feet or like 12 feet or whatever from their target.
Christ.
So it fires, and then it splits, and then it just arcs out like a cone. And that when they did the shots on that, it was like a 6 foot wide diameter area. Because it was like, I don't even know how to describe it. Just imagine just like a shotgun buckshot, and thousands of like fragments are hitting this concrete and penetrating just as hard as a single shot, but they're hitting like dozens and dozens of other smaller holes, and as a result, because there's multiple hole punctures, the rest of the wall crumbles away because its structural integrity is gone.
So it's a bullet that's a shrapnel bomb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I don't know why. For some reason, I just imagine the bullets coming out that you're describing now, firing, but then like again 10 feet before their target, they air burst and then just like scatter cold and like black fragments all over their enemy.
Are you familiar with what a dum-dum bullet is?
It sounds very familiar.
One of them is used to kill Michael Collins. That's why it sounds familiar. But they're basically bullets that deform. I think they anyone who knows what they're talking about guns and bullets is going to think I'm a fucking idiot here. But from what I understand, they're like bullets that like specifically break up and deform on impact to do more damage.
They're designed. Yeah, I know the ones. Yeah, they're designed to. They're designed to fragment once they enter your system. Like, so once they hit you, they break apart, and that way then it's not as easy for someone trying to save your life to pull the individual fragments out.
As far as I'm aware, they're literally banned under the Geneva Convention. Like,
yeah, it's like those 3-way knives.
Yes, those are goddamn terrifying because you cannot stitch the hole.
Exactly, yeah. And like that's the purpose of those bullets you're describing as well, where like the purpose of them is to do as much damage as possible and make it as hard as possible for someone to fix that damage.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what I had in envisioned when I was like the necrotic and the thing. So it's like you get hit and the ice burrows in, and then like the necrotic, then it's like a secondary explosion almost, like the ice.
Yeah.
The ice
like
impacts.
Discharge of necrotic energy.
Yeah, like the ice. It's like the ice impacts and gets it inside the target, and then the necrotic just pulses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's very cool. I can imagine like a bullet hole, and then like a split second after the impact, you're like you see the bullet hole, whatever, and then it's just like like a spider web of black veins that spread out from the
exactly,
from the point.
Absolutely, exactly what I had envisioned with those.
That's really cool.
Yeah, though that's one of the cool ones. Like it's cool because that player is like aware and very much going down the gunslinger thing. They're doing almost like what Percy did in season 1 of Critical Role, where it's like, oh, like I can just make things now, like I can just make new weapons, and like we're fighting monsters, I can just take bits of these monsters, and like because of the magic item crafting rules in D&D, if you're willing to put the time in, you're willing to put the gold in, and you have the special sauce, that's the bit of the monster, and you have the required proficiencies, you can just do that. And he's like, the proficiencies he has, and like specifically like the heart of a frost giant zombie, of course I'm going to make him like fucking ice bullets.
That's very, very cool. I also that's the thing I told you before the podcast that I started kind of throwing together some of my spreadsheets for, let's say, specific ammo types, like whether they're arrows or bullets or whatever, crossbow bolts and so on, or whether they're augmentations for other weapons or potions and stuff like that. But yeah, varying elemental arrows and stuff like that are absolutely on that list as well. I think it just adds. It gives me really good like Hawkeye/Green Arrow vibes when you can be like, what are we going to use now? Fire arrow? No, let's go acid arrow, and then you know you're picking your arrows specifically for moments.
That's like part of the reason why I like Arcane Archer so much.
Yeah, that's very much meant to be. There's don't get me wrong, I have my problems with Arcane Archer. I think it's a little underpowered in a lot of ways, but I do like that Arcane Archer is very much that. It's like, here, pick a bunch of different specialty arrows that you have, and you can fire those and stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, we could do a really cool, just because it popped in my head, like Hawkeye as an artificer. Just reflavor the gunsmith.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that'd be very cool.
Shall I go again, seeing as you had to go twice when I was googling One Piece thing? All right, I will give you a choice. So I have a disposable weapon, an oil, a permanent magic item, or I have a couple of post-its on a Celt/Viking area that I'm building out at the moment.
I'm interested because we come to blows about this so often. I'm interested about your disposable weapons, sir.
Okay, so this is so the disposable weapon. This is actually something that was made crafted himself by our soon-to-be gunslinger. So it's called the Silver Smoke Bomb, and it was crafted specifically in response to the fact that they were fighting lycanthropes. So
I already love the name so much.
Thank you. So there is it's a wondrous item, uncommon, because it's literally nothing very special, but it's like so it's an innocuous looking black and grey ceramic ball with a mixture of sawdust and minuscule silver filings. When broken, a 10-foot radius cloud of sawdust and silver fills the space, heavily obscuring the area and lasting for 1d4 rounds, or until dispersed by a strong wind or gust of air. Any lycanthropes caught within the dust must make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned for 1 hour. And then it's a projectile that can be used with a range of 30 feet. So that was created by, again, our pirate rogue, because they just knew that they were going after lycanthropes. So he went out to the market, went to a jeweler when they were buying rings, and were like, do you have any like scrap silver, like filings or anything? Silver, like, or anything like that? And it was like, and it caught me, I'll be honest, completely caught me off guard. And I was like, yeah, he would. Yeah, why? And he was like, can I buy like a pail of silver filings? I was like, yeah, I don't see why, like, you have the gold. I don't see why a man wouldn't sell you his like scrap silver for just giving him money for it. And he was like, cool. He was like, and his inspiration was, I don't know how historically accurate it is, but apparently ninjas had a thing called, I believe it was called a mitsuboshi, or but it's basically an eggshell that's painted black and filled with a combination of like iron, black sand, and broken glass. And they would just like throw it at someone's feet. Big cloud, horrible cloud that you breathe in, like hurts you and damages you and like blinds you, and then they can kill you. And it's sort of basically the same idea. It's essentially like a small fog cloud that is peppered with like airborne silver, so that if lycanthropes are around, they fail the con check, then they're poisoned. They take the poison condition for the next hour.
That's it. Kind of is this isn't the same person who's playing a Bloodhunter as well, is it?
No, but they are in the same party.
Yeah, they are. Well, because it reminds me very much of the Dimeridium bombs in The Witcher 3, which are. Dimeridium is like the anti-magic metal in The Witcher, and they would basically take like filings or like dimeridium dust, put it into a bomb, and when you throw it, it explodes in an area. And if like certain magical creatures like specters and ghosts and stuff like that pass into it, it forces them into a solid state.
Yes.
They can't be incorporeal. It makes them so it means you can hit them with your sword then, rather than your sword mostly passing through them.
So I've not played a whole ton of Witcher 2, but I did watch a good bit of Jesse Cox. But is that like that? I think is it Axie, where you do the 3 symbols on the ground and like banshees and stuff. When they get into it, you can actually like physically hit them.
It's Yrden.
Yrden, which is by the way, that's a really cool like spell / ability name, Yrden.
Oh yeah.
No, I just writing down what you said there reminded me of something we'll have to have a chat off air about. It's just a funny story. Cool. Yeah, no, I like that. And what's really cool is
Totally stealing that, by the way. That's really, really good.
Oh yeah, you're welcome to. But I realized, and then it's like it stupidly informed my players of it. But back early on, they got a magic item called the necklace of adaptation, which is basically like a collar you put on and it lets you breathe in any atmosphere. What it also does is it makes the cloud kill spell completely inert to you. Which is a super cool and super situational use, which is, I think, that's a really good thing for like a low level magic item as well, in that like it gives you a good benefit, but it also has an additional benefit that's only very situationally specific, and you might forget about it until the time it comes up. And what they realized, and I was just kind of musing it to myself out loud while I was on like a video call DMing, which is probably a bad idea. I probably should have saved that thought till after the session, but I was like, that lets you breathe in any atmosphere. I was like, Morgan, if you were to detune that necklace of adaptation and give it to Tharston or Lycanthrope Bloodhunter, it let him breathe through cloud kill. Like, I'd have to let him be okay in the middle of that silver fog.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I was like, because like it doesn't do damage, it just poisons for an hour. Like cloud kill does damage, like. And I was just like, okay, so cool. Now the inherent downside of using that item is kind of nullified for the party. That's cool.
Yeah, where he would have normally had not been able to enter that 10-foot area as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I've this week learned maybe keep some of my thoughts to myself when I'm DMing.
Wait until the players ask you, and then you could be like, yeah, whatever, I guess that would work, sure.
I'm gonna write that down, hang on. Cool.
That's really good. I love the idea of again, it's very like the Dimeridium bombs, but I mean, like, that was something I loved using in The Witcher as well. It's fun, it's cool to have like an anti-magic, because technically the Witchers, as much as they know a lot about magic, they're not really magic users. They have the signs, but those are equivalent to cantrips. So the idea that you could be like, here is something that will cancel out magical effects. They also have, like, I implemented it in our previous campaign, Dimeridium shackles.
Yes.
Which are basically your anti-mage. You can't cast spells while you have these shackles on you, or do any magical effects. And it's a way of, like, because otherwise, when you think about it, it's very hard otherwise to like imprison a mage of any kind in a D&D world, especially if it has something like Misty Step or something like that. Because like you pointed out before, Misty Step, you only need to be able to see where you're going. That's the only component of it. Like,
there are ways and means around everything. But yeah, no, that is true. The Dimeridium shackles, I actually nearly had forgotten about them, aside from the fact. Funny story, we tried to get a pair of those through the endgame battle, and our sorcerer decided the best way to do that would be to go to the main city we've been operating out of for quite some time and try and get arrested when they wouldn't give them to him willingly.
He asked to buy them, and then they're like, no, we only have like 3 pairs of these, and we need them for the city, so, because they're very rare, so no, we're not going to give them to you. He's like, I'll give you 5,000 gold. And the captain of the guard was like, they're not for sale. So he's like, well, I guess you're just going to have to put some on me, because I'm going to attack this house right now. And there was a family inside that house, and he's there casting Shatter on the structure.
No. He cast Earthquake.
I thought it was Shatter he cast. He cast a full Earthquake.
Oh, maybe not. Yeah, probably was just Shatter, actually. No,
like it was like he did it he did it once, and all the windows and stuff blew out, and then he did it a second time, and the house actually started like collapsing in on itself, and there was a father who like opened the door and held the door frame bravely so his children and his wife could like run out, and he said, go, and they all ran out of the house, and it luckily didn't collapse on them. But at that point then, they weren't even like, let's put some handcuffs on him. They were like, okay, get your fucking crossbows, lads. This guy's attacking our city. So they got a firing squad and started shooting hails of bolts at him.
The moral of the story is, be prepared for your characters to go after any magic items that you just happen to mention in passing.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. So do you have? Do I get to choose again?
Yes, please.
Okay. This time I would love some of that lore.
Lore. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, I've got one here I can do. I got 2. One's a quick one. So I mentioned this before about that you're kind of aware of this already. I wanted, because my world is kind of, again, that 1920s vibe, and the industrialization of which is more like 1800s, but still, of the world had the formation of I'm blanking here. Help me out. Workers' unions.
Yes.
And I wanted to blend the idea of like workers' unions and trade unions and stuff like that with the idea of guilds in D&D. So I created this idea where there are all these different, for some of them are mundane as well. There are all these different unions of workers in various industries. So, for example, one of the ones you guys have dealt with firsthand is the Tappers Guild, and the Tappers are involved in providing water to towns and settlements. So they'll dig wells in certain towns. They'll sometimes, if they're in town, they'll pump water up from underground caves. There was one town you were in called Caspier, where there was no pure water. It was surrounded by the sea on one side and mangrove swamp on the other. So they actually pumped the seawater and then distillated all the salt out of it, and then used that to provide the town with drinking water. But yeah, the Tappers, I have all these colloquial names, so it's not just like the Water Makers Guild or anything like that. They're called Tappers because it's more of a colloquial thing.
That's a great name for that as well. Tappers.
Yeah, I was really happy with it. That was like the first one I came up with. Then I also have I have a couple others like the Croppers, which are farmers of all sorts, and they've again, the idea is that they've kind of come together, so that they're like, hey, we can, if we all band together and we say either you treat us all the same and you give us equal rights and stuff like that, then we can get a really good business coming, and people won't be trying to undercut us and stuff like that, and we can all live pretty solid, comfortable lifestyles. So you won't ever get any farmers who are like not being given fair pay for their stuff, than most farmers would be, because you can just sign up. They'd be like, they'll make sure, like other farmers, like if someone who, I don't know, ran a restaurant or a business or something like that, selling food in a marketplace, and they refused to pay one of their farmer suppliers properly, other farmers would be like, that's fine, none of the rest of us are going to sell to you now. You know, so it's about just keeping things in line like that. But I have the Croppers, which are farmers. I have the Muckers, which are all about waste. Literally, they work the sewers and stuff like that. So they will build sewer lines, manage them, clean them. Some towns aren't big enough for sewer lines, so some of them, rarely enough, but sometimes if they're very lucky, you might find an Otyugh that you can imprison in a cavern beneath the town, and they'll have a very simple sewer system where all the pipes flow into one chamber, and the Otyugh just has a field day feasting on all that horrible stuff. There's also, I reskinned the giant glowing beetles in the player's handbook, I believe there, as giant dung beetles.
Oh, cool.
And some other places will be like, okay, there is no pipes, basically. People will fill an outhouse or something like that, and then the Muckers Guild will come around with a cart, and they will fill it all into the cart, and then transport all that stuff to one, again, a pit, where they will splash all that into the pit, but then the beetles end up consuming it, pooping it out themselves, but what they produce is like fertilizer and stuff.
Okay.
So once they've consumed the waste and then put it through their system, it comes out purer and as a kind of fertilizer that can then be used elsewhere. And it's all just about managing waste and just getting rid of waste.
That's really cool.
I have the Splinters, which are basically lumberjacks, but also foresters, that they plant new forests after they're done. And there's a lot of druids that work within that industry as well. The Criers Guild, which are basically the media, their newspapers.
Oh yeah.
Because they've evolved from being town criers, where they go out into the middle of a square and go, hear ye, such and such has happened, and instead now they actually have proper, like where you are now, there's the what's it called, something, I can't remember the name of the newspaper, it's been a while since we played, but there's a newspaper called the Something Gazette. I'll have to bring it up. It's in it's been a while since we've come across it. I think the last time it was when we killed those demons in that like nightclub, wasn't it? Oh, it's called the Azure Gazette, because the lake that the city you're in is called Temerai. It's built on a lake and on a river called the Azure Lake and the Azure River. So it's called the Azure Gazette, is the newspaper of the town you're currently in. So each Criers Guild will have their own newspaper and name, but they're all, again, they're unionized and they share information as well. Then there's also the Trawlers Guild, which is just a fisherman's guild. Mm-hmm. The Wreckers Guild, which is a rarer one, but it does come up, and that's basically they're treasure hunters and shipwreck salvagers.
Cool.
So they will sail around and they will pull up old shipwrecks and harvest, take the gold if there's gold and stuff like that, treasure. But also they'll just make use of whatever kind of scrap they can get out of it. They're not as big a guild, but they do exist as well.
That one sounds
That's
super
one
interesting,
idea.
actually.
The other one I have here is so this is a town idea I had, and you guys haven't come here yet. It's in Redalia. You haven't come to it yet. I think I've told you a little bit about it before. Where this is basically it's a blend of Bordeaux in France, because Redalia is French. It's like a French motif. So it's a blend of Bordeaux, where all those fantastic wines are made, and also of Lourdes, which is obviously an important religious site in the south of France. And as a result, there is this plateau in the eastern part of Redalia that is a religious town, and it was built up around this spring, kind of like the one that's in Lourdes.
Okay.
And it was a site where like a holy relic fell, and as a result, the water there is very pure, and it's supposed to have all these very good rejuvenation properties and stuff like that. And they use that water. There's this monastery of monks there that use the water to brew wines, and they grow lovely grapes. And again, the grapes grow really healthy and fresh and delicious because of all the celestial energy in the area. And then they
are you going to tell me that you've put Holy Buckfast in your game?
It's essentially Holy Buckfast. But yeah, it's they basically make this wine that's very famous all over the kingdom and even other kingdoms, and it's only produced there and can only be produced there, and it's really rare as well because only so much of it can be produced. They have a limited amount of water that emerges from this spring at any given time. Also, they're really concerned with maintaining the purity of it, so they're not going to heavily industrialize this process. It's important to them to keep it pure, and it's something they do. I've made it so that all the monks that live in this monastery and make this are also Wave the Drunken Monk.
Oh, cool. Yes.
Because I wanted to fit that in. So they're all fantastic fighters, and they've defended this plateau monastery that they brew it in for centuries because they've all taught themselves to fight, and they create this and sell this on. So the town is like it's a holy site. And people travel there. Some people want to learn from the monks. Some people want to go there for religious reasons. But it's basically very much like Lourdes and Bordeaux mashed together.
No, I really like that idea, particularly the drunken master monks that are brewing it. I love that. I love that idea. It's very like, yeah, Buckfast Abbey meets Jackie Chan. I love it.
Yeah, I wanted to like, I feel like the Drunken Master is like, it's hard to put into a game. It's one of those classes where it's very narrow in scope, so it's very hard to put into a campaign without being like, I'm the waster alcoholic party member, also I can fight. A bit of a different spin is, well, I'm a brewer, but there's a reason for me to brew because I'm from this monastery, but also I learned to fight because we defend our monastery all of our holy water.
Not to go off on a tangent, but there's, just based on what you said there's a fight coming in Naruto you're going to really enjoy.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. You're right about the Drunken Master. I think, like, yeah, if you're not going to do that, I think the only real other way you could see it would be to just, like, straight up do, like, a Jackie Chan homage in your game and have, like, he looks like a vagrant, and people bandits are trying to, like, beat him up, and with the party see, like, a group of bandits, like, descend on this seemingly, like, drunk old man by the side of the road, and then he literally just, like, spins on his head and kicks them in the face 4 times and then falls over and is like, I'm gonna go to sleep for a while. You're like, that's the only way I could, like, I'm sure there's other ways, but at the moment they're, like, either doing the brewer monks monastery, very Pandaren World of Warcraft, Mr. Pandaria. They're like a race of, like, panda brewmasters that also practice kung fu.
Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah, that was the joke. But
I'm not a Warcraft person, but I've seen it, and the first thing I thought was, have they just implemented Kung Fu Panda into?
Yeah. That was honestly that was my first thought as well, because like yourself, I'm not a WoW head, but I used to be friends with a lot of people who were.
I've heard that expansion's actually pretty good. That got a pretty positive reception, I heard.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I remember I actually saw a video recently of a guy who levels to level cap on the starter island, completely non-passive, completely non-aggressively. Took the pacifist route, didn't join any, and either the Alliance or the Horde. Spent his whole time on an island, and all he does is he goes and he picks nuts and flowers to get the XP.
That's really good.
Oh, it's taken him years, but like eventually when he hit level cap, like he became a whole thing, and very much like a staple of the WoW community. And Blizzard actually made an NPC based on his character in Pandora.
That's super cool.
It's really cool. It's really cool. But yeah, actually, yeah, like guys, like I'm sure, like I don't know if anyone may have heard of it, but like this game, World of Warcraft, like yeah, that has some
Super
pretty
small. It's a bit of an indie title.
yeah, not really many people that are that passionate about it either, particularly not online. But that has
It's
that
one
actually,
of these new games as a service models.
yeah,
That are popping up all over the
it's
place.
one of these things, an MMO, I believe, and
Yeah, there's some sort of multiplayer aspect to it. I think.
yeah, but that's got some really pretty cool world. Like I've a very cursory knowledge, like surface level of WoW, and that's got some pretty cool world building elements in it that I think a lot of people could take a lot of inspiration from.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, World of Warcraft is good. Also, Warhammer has some awesome stuff.
League of Legends, I'm just gonna stick up for here because as a game that had relatively not great lore for a lot of its time. In the last like 2, 3, 4, well, like, probably like the last 5 years, they've really picked up their game. There is an interactive map of the worlds of Runeterra, which is the world League of Legends is set in. I sent it to you before. It's really high spec map of it, and it shows all of the territories. And you click into a territory, it'll give you an overview of the territory. And when you open that territory, there'll be 4 or 5 other dots on the map within that territory. Then there'll be like towns, sacred sites, places of importance. And you can click on those and get little stories about each of those, and go into that. And like, holy crap! Like I'm absolutely looking at that for a place I'm designing right now, because it's got a very Grecian theme, and like it's just really impressive. And I like, even if you're not a League of Legends fan, of the game, currently they're doing really amazing stuff with their lore, and I would really recommend giving it a read, particularly anything that is written by a guy called Jared Rosen. He writes amazing villains and amazing cosmic horror.
That sounds really good.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of cosmic horror, and
I've noticed.
Well, specifically, there's actually a game I haven't played yet, but I will be playing in a few days because it's a free one on PSN this month. It's Control.
Ooh,
And Control
yes,
is like
yes,
it's not quite Lovecraftian cosmic horror, but it's rooted in the same values of the idea of like things don't make sense to you. Like you're kind of in the dark, you're not sure what's going on, and it's that not knowing is the horror element. And it's a genre that's called New Weird. But I'm very keen to play it because I told you before I had this idea for a bureaucracy devil that's like all about, you know, imprisoning people in offices, basically.
Yeah. Oh.
He's the guy who wants to keep you in a cubicle pushing pencils. For
Oh
all your
god,
days.
I made a really shitty joke about that last week where I like broke up the word overtime into Ophir Team A, and it just went straight over your head. And when I watched I watched the episode later, I just died a death.
I'm noticing that a lot. Is you'll often make jokes, and I'll just go yeah, and I'll move on because I didn't get it. I in the moment I do not pick up on it.
I'm sorry, it's just how my brain functions. But yeah, no, I love all
I think
that.
it's your turn, Martin.
Cool. Right.
Can I make a request for that Viking Celtic?
Ooh, I was actually going to suggest it because the other things I have are relatively short. Actually, I'll give you I'll toss in an item with my Viking area. You've heard it before. Very quick. It's another disposable item. It's called silencing oil. It's basically a bottle of viscous liquid that you can use once. It's a bottle of oil in a circular crystal container. The oil can cover a medium or smaller creature. Along with the equipment it's wearing and carrying, one additional vial is required for each size category above medium. Applying the oil takes 10 minutes and it lasts for an hour. The affected creature then does not suffer the usual stealth penalties associated with heavy armor.
Ooh, that's pretty cool. It says for an hour it lasts.
Yeah, for an hour. I actually made it for a one shot, but I really like it, so I'm thinking of adding it to my proper campaign.
I like the idea of we'll say you there with like an old rag and you're putting it on like a wax for your car.
Hell yeah.
And you're just rubbing it onto your armor like that.
Because I was thinking about it, because like it's such a common thing in D&D where if you wear heavy armor, the penalty of having that high in AC is that you can't sneak to save your life. Mm-hmm. And I was like, it didn't make sense to me that in a world where you have literal multiple cultures of people who are using magic in different ways, using militaries in different ways, and using militaries and magic together, that someone wouldn't go, Jesus, our heavy infantry is fierce loud. You know, we should maybe do something about that. So I didn't want to do like, I also had an idea for like a talisman of silence where like you wear like a medallion around your neck and it casts just silence on self.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
But I liked the disposable thing more because that seems like something more like what a military or an army would use. You know, the cheapest possible solution.
I may also steal that one as well because that would go perfectly in the list of disposable stuff that would sell in the magic shop in my world.
You're welcome to have it. But yeah, so so basically I added a couple of new cultures as we were talking about over the last couple of episodes, and one of them I wanted to do. I added a bunch of cultures that I'm particularly interested in. Usually stuff that I've probably read their mythologies, to be honest. So one that hits close to home and has a special place in my heart is I made a Celtic place called Angvarg Tyr. It's like a Celt / Viking influenced place. I have a couple of post-it notes. So just like I said, I'm still in the process of building it out. So I've got some rough building blocks of it here. So yeah, it's 3 kingdoms ruled by a high king / queen, known for great sailors and explorers as well as bards, and that comes from because both in Celtic and Viking cultures, your reputation and the ability to tell a story were very much important elements of your culture. And that's why you get things like skalds, which were bards that would go out and basically destroy your reputation and rhyme. And like it's particularly in Celtic societies, like bards were treated very, very highly because they were teachers as well as poets. So like if you were a king, you would have a bard in your court, and you would treat them very, very, very well. Because if you didn't treat them very, very well, next summer they'd leave your territory, go to another king, and then while they're at that king, they'd be like, "My king is so great, the other one was shit," and ruin your reputation.
The pen is mightier than the sword.
Hell yeah, and like you could absolutely just ruin a king's reputation. So I was like, oh, if I'm doing that, I'm going to sailors and explorers because it's an island nation, and the Vikings are renowned sailors, even possibly making it to the Americas way before Christopher Columbus.
Leif Erikson, wasn't it?
I'm not entirely sure. Sure. But yeah, so known for those. So those are the kind of, I wanted to be like, what's this place known for? Because usually, even in medieval culture, like, oh, that's X land, they're known for their warriors. That's X land, they're known for their scholars. So I have the royal palace has laid empty since the last monarch died 30 years ago, and a great beast has taken up residence in the hall, and none have been able to fell it since. As a consequence of this, they've gone ahead and created like a smaller, slightly less nice version of the King's Great Hall in the town where they had space now, and like the old one just kind of sits as like a ghostly ruin on the mountain behind the main city that's in. Let's see. Sorry, I'm literally going through post-it notes now. So I have my page where it's government, military, primary religion, and terrain. So yeah, government, high king / queen, 3 monarchs that rule under them, but pay like the 3 monarchs who rule independently. It's sort of like the US and the president in that like in each kingdom they have their own laws and customs and things.
There's governors, but then there's like state level government, but then it all feeds upwards to a federal level.
Like there's the laws of the kingdoms, and then there's the laws of the country. Is probably the best way to put it. Let's see what else do we have here. Yeah, great beast is taking up the hall. 3 of them. The military. Each kingdom has their own standing army that they then feed into the high king / queen's army. Primary religion. Primarily worshippers of nature, but they do have special reverence for the elemental based gods. And then terrain. A mixture of bogs, fjords, mountains, and plains. And then I have one final one on culture. And culture, so values storytelling, craftsmanship, wit, travel, and glory. Famed for sailors, boat builders, explorers, and bards. The people there are known as Vargs. They have an equal society and mostly a naval / pastoral society, so farming, fishing, navy, that kind of stuff.
Primary industries.
Yes, exactly. And most then would live along the coast with wealthy farmers in the central plains with like large holdings and large herds.
I like it, yeah.
And that's And that's all I can tell on air, because these two also have details, but my players will find out.
I like that though. That anytime even you're reading out stuff there, and every now and again you'll hit on a thread, and I'm like, that's so inherently Celtic, and it makes me feel very very homely, very happy. Like you mentioned about it being an equal society and stuff. That was one thing about Celtic culture, is that there was no hierarchical thing between men and women in Celtic culture.
A woman.
Well, not entirely. A lot less than other societies. Like in Celtic culture, women actually kind of got a good deal out of Celtic culture, because what would happen is a woman could just be successful by herself. She could be a chieftain, or she could be a warrior, or crafts person, or anything like that, and get by on her own merit. But if a woman ever didn't want to as well, as long as they're married to a man who has some level of merit, she can use her husband's merit and be that level as well. Whereas men had to get by on their own merit.
And the specific set of rules we're talking about here was called Brehon law. And under Brehon law, a Celtic woman could actually divorce her husband for infidelity. Mm-hmm. Which is crazily modern if you think about it. Like,
yeah, very, very.
Because like it's kind of a weird juxtaposition, because like pretty equal society, women treated quite well actually, particularly when you compare to English common law, which came in later. Mm-hmm. Treated very well. And then, like, at the same time, it's like, they take care of each other and all that shit, equal. Women can divorce their men if they're being pricks, that kind of stuff. And it's like, would you like to see my enemy's head I've mounted on my favourite horse neck?
But there's such crazy, like back and forth with Celtic culture, where it's like, we love songs and poetry and art, but also I'll bury a hurley in your skull if you cross me.
Awesome. That's pretty perfect. Yeah. Oh god, I love it. But
I do love that. I do like that's like I've actually I have the same two source cultures as well, with the Caeld, who are the character you're playing is Lug, who is it's called Caelda. His people are the Caeld, but they are like a Celtic Viking crossbreed as well. But yeah, that's what's interesting. When you were mentioning the fact that the main castle is unoccupied and has been for 30 odd years, and now as a result there is this lesser place where the current High King or Queen occupies. That made me think of Denethor in Lord of the Rings, where it's like, I know that person probably is the true king, but because they're not in their home place, maybe their power is diminished a little bit, and it makes it seem like the place isn't quite running at full capacity like it should be.
Like I don't have it written down there, but like in my head, I have more elements plotted that I haven't gotten to yet. But like that is a source of shame for the king.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that like we cannot occupy our rightful home? It was actually a quest line quite inspired by Beowulf, because in Beowulf, the Great Hall of the King lies abandoned and unused, because every night they use it, Grendel descends from the mountain, breaks in and kills everyone. So I was like, oh, what if we did the opposite, where he did that, but then the monster took over the hall? What would they do then? What would they do if the monster like set up a nest in the hall? And that's kind of the origin of that whole little pusher that I had.
Yeah. Very good. We're kind of coming up on time. Not quite yet, but in a bit. Maybe we just do one more quick one each.
I've like what I've an item I can give, another item, which is tied to a story thing. But do you want to go since I just went on about Anvarg Tyr for probably too long?
Yeah. Anvarg Tyr, land. Gotcha.
Yes.
See. Tyr is Irish for land, for those who don't know.
Indeed.
That is okay. So I have one here. It's not super fleshed out, but it's an idea I had how to implement a subclass, again similar to the way of the Drunken Master Monk. So you are playing a ancestral guardian barbarian, which is a very very cool subclass, but it's very difficult. I think it's one of those ones that can be kind of pigeonholed into I summon my ancestors, blah 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 over and over, which is fine, but again it's hard to deviate or break away if you wanted to make another character of a similar class. There is a faction in my world, and it's only in my world because Gavin played it in a one shot, and I like the character so much that I kind of implemented the faction properly into my world. So he played a tiefling conquest paladin named Senso, who was a member of a group called the Gold Pact Adjudicators, which my lore for them deviates a little because Gavin has his own version of them in his world. They're similar but a little bit different. My version is that they're basically Judge Dreds for hire.
Ooh, I like that already.
Yeah, they're judge, jury, and executioner. And they wear black and gold armor. And they're for hire, and they're dedicated to the ideals of law. They won't just take a job and do something shady most of the time. Everyone has their price, of course, but yeah. So they had this idea for the Gold Pact, where the standard Gold Pacts are typically paladins. Some of them are fighters. What if you wanted to be a barbarian? And specifically, what if you wanted to be an ancestral barbarian? And I had this idea of playing a Gold Pact adjudicator who is an ancestral guardian barbarian. And there's a specific subdivision of the Gold Pacts. So you'd start off as like a scribe or something, like an initiate level when you join. Then you become a judge, and a judge is like the standard enough rank. At that point, you can go off and you can take missions, and you can travel around, and different towns can hire you to investigate and convict, and then subsequently punish people. And you can even, it's not always like executioning. They can transport prisoners and stuff as well to proper prisons. They'll basically go to a town, go, hey, do you have any outstanding warrants on criminals? And they'll be like, yeah, there's one person who somewhere out in the forest, but we haven't been able to find him. We only have a few militia volunteers. So they'll send a judge out, and the judge will find them, investigate the issue, maybe find the person, bring them in, and depending on the crime, either execute them or bring them to a larger town that does have a proper prison to imprison them. And then the town pays them directly. They work for themselves, and the town pays them.
Okay.
So one of the middle rank is like judge. That's a simple enough one. Then there is there's another rank I had called castigator. Which is like another one above. Maybe you command a few people below you.
I love that name, by the way. I absolutely love that name.
I got it from
Brand of Castigation.
Brand of Castigation, yeah. So there's castigator, and they're like sergeant levels. If you're talking about like police, something like a sergeant. Then you have a tribunal, and a tribunal is a very specific. It's kind of on par rank wise with a castigator, but they're like offset. They're like a sidestep in the hierarchy, where if you decide to be a tribunal, or rather if you're chosen to be a tribunal, it's because you've shown to be very loyal to the order, and they want for you to be basically a special agent. They want for you to operate by yourself most of the time. They want you to be as skilled as a castigator, but not having to manage people below you. And as a result of that, they want to pair you up with other people, but not living people. Okay. So instead, they have the souls of some other maybe tribunals that have been before you, or individual people that have been particularly loyal to the order and have done their job as Gold Pact adjudicators really loyally. And they will pick two, and they will pair their spirits to you. And as such, you can summon two other judges from a past life to assist you with being a Gold Pact adjudicator. And every time you want to actually judge someone, or you want to bear down judgment on someone who is supposedly a criminal, you can go, right, you'll summon both your spirits, and each of the three of you will vote on whether or not this person is guilty or not.
Oh, and that works so well with Ancestral Guardian, because 10th level ability, consult the ancestors. Ooh, yeah. Connor, so that's very well done. That is very well done. Also,
I wanted to get away from the idea of being like a savage tribal barbarian, and being like, what if you were like actually part of an order of knights, you know?
Also, Gold Pact Adjudicator is a great name.
That's on Gavin. Gavin came up with that one for the faction, and most of the concept behind them, I've put a spin on it myself and implemented it to my world. But I'm particularly proud of the tribunal rank, where you undergo a pairing ritual where they choose two spirits they think will work with your style of being a Gold Pact adjudicator, who are also very loyal members, and they pair them off with you, and then you can be this walking tribunal court that will instigate, you know, law and everything, and wherever you go.
Cool. No, oh man, yeah, I like Judge Dredd anyway, so that naturally appeals to me. But yeah, the name, like, props to Gav, because Gold Pact Adjudicator is such an evocative name, but it's also extremely simple. Like, yes, you make a pact with them for gold to adjudicate your situation. Like,
it's all in the title. It's Rontil. It does what it says on the tin.
By seconds, you beat me to it. Cool. We'll I guess we'll kind of finish up with my last one here. So this is an item I call the Eldritch Circlet, and it's an item that was another player crafted item. So at the end of the second arc my players went through, they fought like this like mindless eldritch monstrosity kind of like thing that was rampaging through the city, and they killed it, and as it was dying, like bits fell off and petrified. Well, my sorcerer, being clever, when bits were falling off, ran over, got it, put it in a like put it into the bag of holding so it wasn't exposed to like the outside elements and kind of just in a void. Brought that back. It was still petrified, but brought that back to the city that the land city that they were operating on. I can't. Land city sounds like such a weird way to phrase it. But they basically went back to their quest hub, for lack of a better term, their quest hub city that they were living in. And there was an NPC in that they had gotten to know through various missions, who was the head of the Mages College in that city. She's the headmistress. Her name is Arisanya Dan, and she. Like the Mages College is also the biggest in the country. So she's pretty knowledgeable, pretty good, kind of thing, like where they have artificers on call as well. And she was telling her about it, and she was like, "Look, how about we make a deal? Let me study this, and I'll make you something cool from it." And she was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So the Eldritch Circlet came out of it, and so I'll give you the description I wrote from it. This gunmetal silver circlet has been crafted to look like a ring of grasping tentacles angled toward the sky. Each tentacle is topped with a small purple quartz and shines dimly in the light. The circlet has 5 charges and regains 1d6 plus 1 charges each day at dawn. While attuned to the circlet, you may add the cantrip Eldritch Blast to your spells known, and you may also do the following. By expending 1 charge, you may cast Arms of Hadar at first level. You may expend a further charge to increase this to second level, and additional 2 charges to increase this to third. You may also expend 3 charges immediately to cast Hunger of Hadar at third level. And attunement is required.
I really like that.
Yeah,
I like that it's your players are really really good at like really good for like going, hey, I got this stuff off a monster, I want to make something out of it.
I very well see when I abandoned the magic item shop thing almost wholesale. I was like, guys, this is how we're gonna do it. This is how we're getting them from out. And like, who doesn't love a good magic item, you know? And like, yeah, as soon as they became aware that if we find something strong, might be able to make something cool from it. But they're like, I do feel quite lucky in that my party is quite creative, and it gives me a lot to kind of springboard off of.
Yeah, it's nice. It's not, yeah, like I said, like you're saying, to springboard off of it's really really good because they'll prompt you. They'll go, I have this item. Like take the frost giant thing for example. It's a frost giant, but also they were dead frost giants. So what can you do for that if I want to make some sort of ammo? And then you have ammo, frost giant, death, and you make necrotic frost bullets out of it, you know. But it's good it's a good exercise for you as a dungeon master to kind of flex those creative muscles when they go, hey, here's 3 prompts based on an item I have. Go DM go.
Oh, that might be a cool
that
idea.
Could be fun for,
I
said it and didn't even think of it, and then when you went, I went, oh.
Oh god, it's like that time when we both realized we were both cursed by werewolves at the same time. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Literally at the table, we were like, "Why are we acting so weird?" And then both of us were like, and I swear to God, you're like, dun 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 dun, and then both of us went, werewolves.
Yeah.
Good times. Oh, cool.
But Martin,
yes,
that's all the time we have for today.
That's it. I can't pretend to be shocked right now because you did warn me about 10 minutes ago, but yeah. that was a lot of fun. Particularly fun for me to get a little glimpse behind the curtain, because I get to show a lot in this because you're not in my campaign, but you're under a little bit more of a spoiler limitation, and you're doing a really good job of not Tom Hollanding it.
Thank you. Thank you for putting it that way as well. Yeah, no, it's but I mean, like, there's a lot of stuff I don't mind sharing. Like that whole village, you guys haven't been to yet, but it's not like it's a famous enough place about that plateau with the monks and stuff. Like, there's some stuff like that I don't mind sharing. Frankly, I like sharing because I don't know if you guys will make it there, and I like you knowing from a player perspective that there is more out there, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe you just decide, hey, fuck it, let's just go here for no reason at all, other than to see this cool place with monks and wine and stuff.
Purely from when we did a little skip and you said that like Arkham went to no, I don't think it was Boshi, but you mentioned Boshi and like
Jiaoyan.
Yeah. But ever since you mentioned that, I've been like, someday Someday we're going there. I will force the party to go there if needs be. I want to see what this is about.
I will actually. I'll add that to my list of stuff here, and maybe next time we do one of these world building, just run through some ideas we had. Maybe next time we do that, I'll bring up Boshi Sedate Glass and talk more on that and my inspirations for it. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, stories you'd like to share, or topics you would like to have us talk about, please tweet us at Micflayers Pod on Twitter. It's there on the lower screen. You can also find our podcast on YouTube and Spotify. You can find our podcast on both YouTube and Spotify. Martin, where can people find you?
You'll find me on Twitter quite a bit at So Sorry It's Over, which is boom about there. And again, you can find our Twitter handle for the podcast there. Please shoot us questions, episode topics, anything you can think of. Even if you just want to have a chat, hit us up. That's kind of about it really. I'm planning on getting back into Twitch a bit more now that we've got a new modem, and it won't just like be a slideshow as it was the last time I tried to stream Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And you can find me there, hopefully presenting slideshows at twitch.tv/Murt. That's MURRT.
Cool. You can find me on Twitter at 0.Conor, ZEROPOINTCONOR, 1N, very important. And as always, every Friday here at 6 p.m. Irish time on the Micflayers podcast.
Sludge, friends.
So, Martin, thank you for joining me. Thank you all for joining us.
Bye.
See you next time, guys.
Bye.